ਤੇ ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਰਸ ਕਾਰਨਰ ਦੇਖਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਆ। ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਗੈਸਟ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਆ ਜੋ ਗੈਂਗ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਉਹਦਾ ਕਾਰਨ ਕੀ ਸੀ ਆਹ ਲਾਈਫ ਸਟਾਈਲ ਚੂਜ਼ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਬਚਪਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਉਹ ਆਹ ਗੈਂਗ ਲਾਈਫ ਤੋਂ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਸੈਪਰੇਟ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਨਵੀਂ ਲਾਈਫ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ। ਸੋ ਆਓ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡਾ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਗਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਆਹ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਆਪਦੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰੋ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਾਡਾ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਵਾਂਗੂ ਪਰਪਸ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਦੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋਵੇ, ਪੋਜ਼ਿਟਿਵ ਹੋਵੇ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਮੇਬੀ ਇਹਦੀ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਸੁਣ ਕੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਬੱਚੇ ਦਾ ਬੈਟਰ ਚਾਂਸ ਹੈਗਾ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਚੋਂ ਨਿਕਲਣ ਦਾ। ਸੋ ਸਾਡਾ ਗੈਸਟ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਆ, ਉਹਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਆ ਸ਼ਨਾਨ ਚਰਾਨੀਆ। So Shanann, welcome to Cora's Corner. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we want you to take us all the way back. How in the world did you, from being an innocent child, get into that gang life? And then how did you go from that bulletproof vest life to suited and booted the way you are now?
Okay, sure. So given the context that we're talking about, I'll start at when I came to Canada. So a little bit before Canada I was born in Kenya, and my parents are actually also born there. So we were all born there, we grew up there, and then my parents decided that they want a better life for their offspring, me and my older brother. My older brother is about a year and a half older than me. So they thought to themselves, Kenya is a third world country, and obviously the education is poor, the safety is poor, the healthcare is poor. So they would want a better life for their children. So they wanted to bring us to Canada. Obviously Canada is a beautiful country, as we know, right? So many opportunities, and all the things I mentioned are so much better here. The school system, the safety, the healthcare, and just opportunity wise, you have less corruption, you have less bureaucracy, right? Not to say there is none, but it's less. And so my parents saved up money, and my dad actually has family here in Calgary. So he was here in the 70s, so he came, he worked, he's checked out the country, and he said this place is beautiful. And so they picked Vancouver, obviously because Kenya is a tropical place, right? We have 32, 36 degree weather every single day. And I think it was my mom that said, man, from that to minus 42, I don't know, right? So they picked Vancouver because it's beautiful in weather-wise and also to live in. And so we immigrated here in 93. And at that time I was 11 years of age. And when I came here, I faced a huge culture shock. And I didn't see that coming at all, right? I was going through my own puberty actually because I was 11 years of age. And the culture shock hit me blindly because nothing prepared me for it. And also I did not face anything like that back then, right? My experience of life, I mean, up until 8 or 9 is just an innocent boy, like you said. Mm-hmm. And coming into 10, 11, you're sort of experimenting with things and getting to know a little bit more of what the teenage years will be like. But facing a culture shock, I faced a lot of bullying. Because when I came here, I talked differently, obviously. I dressed differently, I looked differently. And as you must know, back then, there wasn't many brown people here, right? In fact, I remember the school that I went to, there was 2 brown kids out of 700, oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Right, in elementary school. And it's funny now because I speak at schools, and I usually speak in Surrey schools. And I tell them when I came in here, I faced a huge culture shock and this racism and this bullying because there was 2 brown kids out of 700. And the 2 white kids in class relate to me today because everyone else is brown.
Correct.
So that's quite funny. But that was the scene, and I didn't know how to react to it at all, so I kind of just took it in. Like, I didn't even know what bullying was. People were just making fun of me. And the thing that was going through my mind most consistently was, I don't understand this. Like, I must be unlikable. Like, if somebody doesn't like me, what else are you supposed to think? I must be unlikable. And that thought did not cross my mind at all in Kenya, because I wasn't around people that liked me, right? Yeah. And so, as that was going through my head, I started to believe it. I must have qualities that are unlikable. But nevertheless, I continued and still kept getting bullied, and I became really silent type, and this kind of put my walls up and safety and how do I look, become self-conscious, right? And then I started talking to my parents and teachers and friends' parents and all of that. And consistently across the board, I kept hearing, even from my older brother actually and his friends, that bullying, that's just part of it. Like, that's just what people go through. I mean, what's the big deal? Like, suck it up, walk it off, right? And in reflection, I do understand why they were saying that, because that was the scene. There was no awareness around bullying. There was no education around that. That was part of...
It's totally different now.
It is totally different now. And I'm so
totally different
thankful,
now.
like,
Yeah.
especially where we are right now and what's going on, even though it's a bad situation right now, we have so many support groups, so many support systems, right? So many people that are willing to help and look at this issue. And back then, that just wasn't the case.
People don't realize what you go through and what effect bullying has on you.
Right.
If it's just the fact that they just brushed it off, that's not okay, because that's totally not validating your feelings on how you're
Yes.
feeling. And it makes you feel terrible.
It does, and it makes us, repress our feelings and feel isolated, right? Not understood, all of that as a kid as well. Now, it's not okay that that happens, but I can also understand the innocence behind it, because they themselves were not educated on how to approach it, so it wasn't like a malicious intent at all, right? And again, with my parents too, they just did not understand, and they were here new. They went from third world to first world, so they had to work 12 hours a day to put food on the table. Everything was more expensive than where we lived. So
And plus, I think bullying is a new concept for a family who just came to Canada and they don't understand, because they can only support you if they've been in that scenario before, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
right.
think the best advice they could give at that time was just thick skin, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, also that's their experience, right? They grew up with thick skin.
Yeah.
But everyone translates things differently, right? We all translate things differently in our head. We all interpret differently. And so for me, I just became this really coy, shy, kind of introverted person, which I naturally am, but not to a point where it's detrimental for my own, well-being. So anyways, time went on, and this was grade 6, 7, and I remember after hearing that, in my head it sounded really like, get up, get dressed, go get bullied. Right? Because it wasn't like get up, go get dressed, go to school. It was get up, go get dressed, go get bullied. And I was like, that doesn't sound so appetizing to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip school, because that's the solution I came up with. What else was going on in my head besides trying to find a way to avoid it, right? So every time my parents would drop me off outside, and then before they go to work, they would drop me off at the front door, and out the back I'd go every single day. And when you're skipping school, you find people that are skipping school, and you start hanging out with kids like that. So that kind of became my scene, right? And funny enough, I started to hang out with kids that were also immigrants. Like, they weren't from Kenya, they were all from different European countries or wherever they are. Jamaican, Mexican, and they were facing the same thing, right? In just a different context. Or sorry, same context, maybe different content.
Yeah.
Right? They were also facing a culture shock. They were also facing not knowing how to face it. And they were also facing, I don't want to be there, so I'll skip school because I don't know how to be there.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know how to be there. So we found a belonging in each other. Oh, you too, me too, right? Let's hang out together. And so that's how it kind of started. So by the time I went to grade 8, which was high school, I was in Burnaby. So in Burnaby, grade 8 starts high school. And high school was grade 8 to 12. So instead of a 700 kid school now, I was in a 1200 kid school. And in high school, I remember when we first went into grade 8, the grade 9s were really happy, because now they're in grade 9s, the spotlight's off them, spotlight's on the new kids, and all the grade 8s get bullied, because that's kind of the ritual. So I still faced bullied, and I was like, man, this is not leaving. And so at one point, I became so fed up with it that I just had an outburst, and I started fighting back, right? I remember specifically, one of the first times I fought back, it was the back of the school, somebody was bullying me, there was everyone looking, and I just went, I've had it, So I fought back, and as I was fighting back, I remember hearing cheers. Yeah, Shanann, stand up for yourself, that's it. Now again, to me, it translated as, ooh, this is something likable. This is what I'll do, this is it. So I started doing that more.
Yikes.
And as I started doing that more, as I got more cheered, I was unconsciously developing an avatar that wasn't me, but was willing to be liked. So, right? Like, I was just looking for a sense of belonging. If this is what's going to get me at, this is what I'll do.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what I continued doing. And I became the bully by grade late grade 8, I was the bully now. I used to go and jack kids and rob them and bully them and slap them, and people started fearing me. And I mistook that. I mean, all these things I'm saying all in reflection because I've worked so much on myself by getting coached on and counseling, therapy, and all of that. And I started to see that as a young kid, if we're not aware of how we're interpreting life, we become a victim of the interpretation. But if we can be aware that we are interpreting human beings, right, we're not experiencing reality, we're experiencing interpretations of reality. That alone would have saved me so many years. But nevertheless, I became a victim of that, and again, one of those translations or interpretations was that when people were fearing me, I thought they were respecting me. So I was like, ooh, this is respect, so I'll do this more, right? So I became a fighter. So in grade 8 alone, the first school I went to, within 5 months, I had been suspended 3 times for fighting and then expelled. Went to another school, got sent to another school, fighting again, suspended 3 times, expelled. Went to another one, fighting again, suspended 3 times, expelled. So all within grade 8. I was kicked out of the whole Burnaby district and sent to an alternate school. And this alternate school is pretty much where kids that are coming out of YCC or YDC are there, waiting to go to YDC and YCC, they're there as well.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Youth correctional facilities.
Oh.
Youth
Okay.
correctional center,
Okay.
youth detention center, YDC, YCC. And so when I went there, I remember, being in a space where I was sort of cheering it. Like I was like, I'm the bad kid now. I'm in the den, so to speak. But I didn't realize what I was facing was an environment that would support all the avatar that I've created, right? And so one of the first things that I remember being in that school is that I went to the washroom and there was kids doing heroin and crystal meth, like 14, 15-year-olds.
Openly?
Openly in the washroom.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that became the environment that I sort of, my schooling environment.
So were teachers or the staff, were they aware of it at all, or was this a hush-hush thing?
It was, I think they were aware of it, for sure, but it wasn't, like nobody was really caught red-handed, and unless you're caught red-handed, there's all these rules that you have to go
Cracks through the system.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And everyone, as far as I remember, the teachers were really focused on keeping the kids in school. If we can keep the kids in school, they'll be out of trouble. And now, again, thankfully, like I'm talking 94, 97, like that era, 20 years later, we're seeing that keeping kids in school and educating them and having them question how they're experiencing reality and educating them about their emotions and that helps. Well, back then it was just to keep them in school, right? So again, I see the innocence in what they were lacking the education, so they couldn't support us in the way that we needed. So anyways, I was in that school, and I stayed there for about 2.5 years. I think it was till I was turning 15, and I kept getting in trouble, and I kept getting in trouble, and I kept getting in trouble, and called in the principal's office, right? And at one point I just said, you know what? I'm sick of this. I'm out of here, right? I'm done with school. So I decided to drop out. And in my mind, the main reason I was deciding to drop out was because I was misunderstood, or at least felt misunderstood. And why I felt misunderstood was because I kept hearing, every time I got in trouble, I kept hearing, Shana, here's what's good, here's what's bad. If you do this, here's the outcome. If you do this, here's the outcome. Right? Well-intentioned. But nobody was saying, hey, let's pause and ask you, what's going on in you?
Yeah.
What's going on inside of you? Like, what are you curious about? What are you passionate about? What's troubling you? None of that. It was just, here's what's good, here's what's bad. Here's what's good, here's what's bad.
Yeah.
Now, why I'm emphasizing that point in my speeches these days is because parents still do that today to their kids. And that does not work. That does not create connection, it creates distance.
So can you repeat what kind of questions you think would have been important at that time? Just so
Yeah.
for any parents that are listening, and they probably are struggling, and there's no manual on this. So
Right.
it's really important for them to know the right questions to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, and I do work with families, I work with parents, I work with kids, youth. And first and foremost, I say that create a connection with your family, create a connection with your children, And that's really just about seeing them as a friend. You don't have to play the parent role all day, every day. You don't have to be the boss of the house. You know, share some vulnerabilities. Share some of what you've gone through in your life, how you messed up, some mistakes, right? You don't have to do a vulnerability vomit.
You are bang on.
Right,
Yeah.
but that's what creates connection.
Vulnerability is huge. Vulnerability is the core part of connection.
Exactly.
If you don't, like, that's what I'm learning in school myself too. So it's funny how you said that.
Absolutely, it is. It's true within all human beings.
Yeah.
And I think we get so stuck in these roles, and then we create a culture out of those roles.
Yeah. We're not perfect.
Of course.
No one's perfect, and we should be able to say that, hey, we're not
Yes.
perfect, I mess up.
Yes. And how is the child going to learn what life is about if you're not going to teach them about both sides of life, right? Or it's not even a teaching, maybe just share it.
They're going to explore themselves, if anything, right? But
That's
if you
right.
share it, they already know, then like, you know what? I don't want to choose that path because I know what can happen
That's
there.
right. That's right.
Right? Because it's someone I trust that's told me and
Yes.
they've educated me that way,
Yeah.
right?
And that's a great point, and that's another point I usually bring up in my speeches, is that if you have a genuine connection with your children, they'll come to you in times of distress. Like their reaction will be to come to somebody they trust.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that connection, they're still going to have a reaction, and it's going to be the boys,
Yeah.
right? That's what I did. I was like, oh, I'm going through something. I'm going to go to the bar with the boys. I
So
can't
let's
talk about
fast
this with them.
forward now to how you got into the drug, like into the gang life. Just because I want to, we love hearing your whole story,
Respect
but
the time, of
respect
course.
the time, and you know we've only got a few more, like about 20-minute episodes, so we just
Okay.
want to make sure that we hear exactly what triggered you to even get involved with those kinds of people.
Right. So at 15, I was dropping out, right? And this, to me, is a turning point, because I remember being called in the principal's office. He was a really cool principal. And he told me, can I have a conversation with you off the record? And I said, yeah, sure. And he's like, this is totally off the record. I'm just telling you, man, if you don't go to school, if you don't stay in school, if you decide to drop out, you won't be successful. Like, that's the reality of life. You need school, you need education. And again, my translating mind was like, success means money. Oh, so you're telling me I won't be able to make money, is what you're saying. Now, I didn't voice this, but that is what I was hearing. Anyways, I decided to drop out, and that's how I got into selling drugs. Because selling drugs brings you money, and because I was already financially insecure. It was just a psychological insecurity, not literally financially. But I was scared that I'm never going to be successful, right? I won't have money, so I went and started selling drugs with the kids. And I started making money, and I literally started making more money than that principal that year. So I was like, I'm successful,
Yeah.
right?
And Shanann, do you think that's a big thing still today, that the Indian community really pushes their kids to think that success is based on financial gains?
Yes, I think it's still there.
Yeah, I think so.
But it is changing. Like, there's so much good hope there, because the conversation is changing.
Yes.
And the kids are questioning it. And the kids are questioning it because the world doesn't see it that way anymore, right? 20 years ago, it was true that if you don't have an education, you won't be successful.
Yeah.
Today, it's not true. Most of the biggest and best companies don't even require a degree anymore, right? You can still work for them. 20 years ago, success meant financial success. Today, it means health, leadership, relationships, self-care. All of that is included in success.
Totally.
So the collective consciousness is changing, the collective understanding is changing, and I think that's a really good thing, although there's obviously residue from the old paradigm. But it's on its way out, so if we continue that dialogue, I think it'll be pushed out naturally. So anyways, I got into it, and at 15 I started selling drugs, and I was out of school by that time, right? So 15, 16, 17, 18, I just got deeper and deeper involved in it. And I was using drugs, because if you're selling drugs and not using drugs, you're lying, because everyone who's selling it at some point uses it. And that's the truth. I remember I had one friend that used to sell cocaine, and he was one friend that just didn't do it. And we were all like, wow, he doesn't do it. That's pretty strong. And then his mom died, and he had the bag. And what do you do to numb yourself? You go to the thing that's there. He started doing it. So you're not safe from it. If you're selling it, you're going to do it. So anyways, that was what happened with me. I was kind of using it as a party drug here and there, experimenting on the weekends and such. And then when I was age 18, my best friend got shot dead. And I went into a deep depression spiral, because I just wasn't expecting him to die. My world shattered. I was the first heartbreak I've ever had, was losing a best friend. And I went in a very subtle way from using drugs as a party, sort of. It's not who I am, but it's just what I do. Man, I need this to numb myself, you know. And so that became a daily thing, a daily life, a habitual way of living. And that continued from 18 to about 21, 22. And I went deeper and deeper into that lifestyle. So I began selling large amounts of drugs. That went to selling guns. I used to ship them from the US to sell them here. That went to home invading other gangsters and getting into shootouts with them, because when you home invade a gangster, they're not just going to go, all right, take my stuff. They fight back. So risking our lives in just very stupid ways, and that became the lifestyle. And another point I want to emphasize and just slow down here is that at that age, the youth are so bold. If you remember being that age, right? 18, 19, 20, we're very, very bold. We're very courageous.
Too bold.
Too bold, right. But with the right direction,
Yeah.
generously bold, right? If you look at all the best soccer players, hockey players, 18, 20, 22, they're at their best. Because they're stupid bold, but they're in the right direction, right? Like the wisdom piece is missing, but the boldness is there.
Yeah.
Now that's true for any kid at that age. So the boldness is going to be there. If there's a correct direction, the boldness is used properly. If there isn't, it's going to be used incorrectly. Like mine was, although I am lucky to get out. But I can tell you between age 18 and 22, I lost more than 20 friends to death. And in 1 year, 2001, I lost 9 friends to overdose or death or jail or something, right? They were just gone. Even when they went to jail, they were killed. And that became my life. So that continued till I was age 23. And at age 23, my parents' house was shot up while they were inside the house. And that shook me, right? That literally halted my world. There were 6 shots fired in the home. They were all inside. Nobody was hurt. And to this day, I don't know how that's possible. And I don't care. But that literally just shook me. You know, I started to really reflect and go, wait a second, what has life become? Like from 13 to 23, from grade 8 to age 23, it went like a blink. I was playing a role and I didn't know what happened, and here's where it came to. And to be honest, I was just literally covered in shame. My dad and mom worked so hard to bring me here for a good life. It's not like I grew up in a household that had alcohol issues or drug issues. It wasn't a broken family. It was a very loving home. And this is what I've brought to their home. So I literally woke up, right? This is your chance. My life switched at that point because I remember thinking to myself, nobody's hurt. The ball is in your court. And obviously I'm in this lifestyle, so my friends are like, oh, we know who it is, we're going to go get them, the tools are ready, let's go do this. And I remember thinking, you know what, I'm not going to do anything.
Wow.
And that was my key out. Because the ball is in my court. If I do something, I might look cool. But they might get hurt, I might get hurt.
Yeah.
So obviously I got made fun of for that, but that was so clear to me that if I can take this little sliver and try and exit this life, this is my chance. So I took it, and I tried to get out of that life. But of course you just can't get out of that life. So any job I tried to get or tried to be a civilized member of society just kept backfiring, because I didn't know how to do that. I was never a civilized member of society, right? In the first 2 years I tried to get jobs, I was fired from 6 different jobs and kept going right back into that life, because that's all the people I knew, and that's all I knew how to do, what to do. The only way I knew how to make money. But I kept at it and kept at it and kept at it, and eventually 2007, 2008, my girlfriend at the time was getting out of university, and she was saying, you know, instead of just going from job to job, why don't you start your own business? Because then it'll be you as the boss. Now one of the major things there was I couldn't keep a job because I was too arrogant, right? Like, I'll come when I want, and you know who I am. And they're like, yeah, we know who you are, you're fired. And so I would go back into that life and come back out, and you know who I am. They're like, we don't care. So she was saying, you know, you'll be your own boss. You don't have to answer to bosses and do all these things. And now in reflection, I can see that she was actually saying, you're so arrogant, you should get your own business. So anyways, if you do remember, in 2008-ish, there was a financial crisis happening. Financial markets were down, everything was tight. So to start your own business at that age, at that time, was not only difficult, but with my history, which was a blank page, right? Like the
Yes.
credit history, resume was half a page long.
Yeah.
Where have you been? You look like you're just born yesterday. What have you been doing with your life? So everything was really hard. So we decided to go into franchise. Look at different franchises. If we can plug ourselves into a franchise that's already established, we can, learn the system and be okay. It will take us somewhere. And so that became, after looking at few, that became Tim Hortons. So I went to Tim Hortons and wanted to get a franchise and spoke with them. And they basically said to me, we choose people. It's not you that chooses people. Because I was going, we choose Tim Hortons. We've looked at McDonald's and Tim Hortons. We're like, no, we choose people. And I remember getting so offended. Like my ego was so bruised. I was like, I'm going to get a Timmy's no matter what now. Because this guy has just embarrassed me. So I tried to get a Timmy's and I talked to people that owned Timmy's. And they said basically, if you work there, that's your best chance. Because you really don't have any other credibility. You don't have a financial history. You have no money. You have no credit. You have no resume. What's going on? What other chances are there? And I said, I don't want to work at Timmy's. I want to own one. Because I'm so arrogant, right? But nevertheless, I sucked it up and I went and applied at a Timmy's and wore a hairnet and started serving coffee. And I started working there, and I did 4 years there. So that was me learning how to pour coffee and make sandwiches. Then I became a baker. Then I did midnight shifts for 6 months, which was difficult at minimum wage. And then became a supervisor, and then became an assistant manager and managed the store. And that was when I started to actually become really humbled, because I was a minimum wage worker, getting treated like a minimum wage worker. Even that has changed now, but 20 years ago, or 12 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And I used to get really offended over and over again, but I had this thing in my mind that I want to own a Timmy's. So I just, it's okay. Go in the freezer, punch the boxes if you're mad, or come back out and do your job. So that's what I did. I literally just punched boxes in the freezer. And then another thing that really humbled me was I was working with a lot of Filipinos. And these people worked 3 jobs, 4 jobs, right? They had
Still
2,
do.
3, 4. Yeah, they do. And they were sending money home. And I remember having conversations with them at break and being so embarrassed that here's somebody who's doing honest days worth of work, 2 jobs, 3 jobs at minimum wage, and sending money home. And they can walk around proudly because they can sleep well, basically. Here I am trying to live this life. So that played a huge role in me, even though I could never voice it. I was internalizing it, and that did help change me. So I stuck with it, and then in 2011 got approved for Timmy's and became a Tim Hortons owner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was really exciting, and had all the highs of achievement and accomplishment.
So basically your arrogance, when you used it in the right direction, got you somewhere when you used it in the right manner.
You controlled it. Yeah, you controlled it and shifted your boldness.
I would say controlled it. Yeah, I managed my arrogance and got to see that, it's not helpful. I mean, even the arrogance, it's like if you don't know how to be anything else but arrogant, you're pretty innocent in being the arrogant, but it's on your responsibility to try and be a certain way, right? And thanks to the Filipinos I talked to, that taught me what humility is. That, shifted my understanding.
That's amazing. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming.
But I do have to ask, did you ever fear that because your house was shot up, so walking around, like working at Tim Hortons, you're out in public, people see you, did you ever have a fear that you might be attacked?
Yeah, there was the fear. There was always this delusional fear.
Okay.
Like there was, even now when I'm watching a movie and the cat is outside or something, I hear something outside, my first thought is someone's here, and then I go and see it's a cat. And I was like, okay, that was years ago, it's okay.
But there's PTSD involved.
Yeah, that's right, there is. So that was there, but there were also ways of, I don't know, I guess, cushioning it, if you want to call it, For example, when I started to leave that lifestyle, like I said, people make fun of you or people want to get you and whatever it is. There was a few solid friends that I had, which I still have to this day.
Okay.
And they understood, right? Like it was no dialogue, but they were like, we get what you're doing. The only reason they got it is because they were also limited in their own life on what possibilities they can experience.
Yeah.
So if you got a way out, you go for it, man, right?
Yeah.
And they had my back. So they not only had my back if things went down, but they had my back in talking me up. This guy's doing the right thing. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, I've even run into some that were considered my enemies back in the day, and even they were proud, right? Even they were like, "Good for you if you can do it," right? So that's real.
But I think that is the reality, that when people, like when you've left, the people that are still there, they don't want to be there either.
That's right.
And I think that's a big thing that we need to make sure that the world is aware of, that these people who are gangsters, they don't want to be there.
They don't want
and they've fallen into the wrong paths. Like, you know, just concluding our interview today, I just want to highlight a few things. The first, that you were 11 years old when you felt bullied. Issues had already started when you were that young. And so parents might think that their kids are going to act a certain way when they become teenagers. 11 years old is not a teenager. You're
Yes.
still a child in a way, right? So, you know, that's a big thing to highlight, that these emotions develop at such a young age, right? And then the crucial thing you said is those years between like 18 and 21. Those are huge. And just like you said, we were all so bold. All the things we probably did then, we couldn't do now, right? But, you know, if that's geared in the right direction. So these are all great conversations, and we would love to have you back in other time where we can actually then gear our episode towards what kind of education we can give towards parents and what resources we can give them. Because this episode, we want to really focus on having our audience be the children, you know, the children of the next generation who are in these situations, are getting bullied. Like, we just had our last interview last week of a child who's, I think 7, getting bullied. And if this is what's going to happen, even though he's coming from a loving home, you came from a loving home, and this was the outcome, and that's very heartbreaking. So we do want to say thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time, your dialogue, you going into the Surrey schools and other schools and speaking the truth, your real story. This is what kids want to hear. They don't want to hear some police officer, some doctor, some psychologist coming and talking to them. They want to hear it from the real guy who went through it, right?
That's true. That's true. I do get that a lot from the kids. And if I can just add one thing,
Of course.
I do not have a Tim Hortons anymore, and that's I wanted to say that because after I got it and after all the accomplishments and achievements, that I realized that I actually want to serve. So I gave it back after, I think it was the second year I gave it back.
Wow.
And then I started my own coaching business, which I've been doing the last 7+ years. And I think what you said, if I do come back, if I have the opportunity to come back, I would love to speak about what I do in that world and how I work with the youth, parents, families, community, and all that.
So we will be providing our guests with a link to, because you have a website.
I do.
And just letting us help the community, right? Whatever way we can. So again, thank you very much for joining us today. ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡਾ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਲਈ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰੋ ਇੱਕ ਮਰਦ ਦੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਬਚਪਨ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੈਂਗ ਵਾਲੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਉਂ ਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੋਂ ਨਿਕਲਿਆ। ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਆਪਦਾ ਇਹ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਿਓ। ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਸੁਜੈਸ਼ਨਸ ਆ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਈਮੇਲ ਕਰੋ। ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ, ਸ਼ਨਾਨ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਰਿਸੋਰਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਈਮੇਲ ਕਰੋ। ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਇਹਦਾ ਕਰੂੰਗੇ। ਸਾਡਾ ਈਮੇਲ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਹੈ coursecorner@channelpunjabi.ca। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ 'ਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਅਗੇਨ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰੋ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਈਮੇਲ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਪਾਂਸਰਸ ਦਾ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, She Jobs and Gershniger at Hair Motors. Thank you.
ਸਾਡਾ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵੇਖਣ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਨ ਲਈ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ ਚੈਨਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਤੇ ਨੋਟੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਈ ਬੈਲ ਆਈਕਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਬਟਨ ਤੇ ਕਲਿੱਕ ਕਰੋ।